Here I am,
There you are.
unmuted.
Barry, it's sad that here we are on the eve of our wonderful country's 250th birthday. And there are some folks winning elections on really dumb things. It's very sad to watch. And the one we're going to discuss today is not only dumb, but unconstitutional.
Yes, I'd like to talk about the elections in one of our future Zoom calls because we had an election here, which is a bit of a shocker. And I want to talk about that in one of our future calls. Today, I'd like to talk about the War Powers Act. And the War Powers Act is a complete failure. It was passed in 1973. And what the War Powers Act says is basically if the president wants to wage war and negotiate a treaty with a foreign country, he has to have congressional approval. And if he doesn't get congressional approval, Congress has the power to pass a resolution ending the war. And in fact, we've done this. Both the House and the Senate a week ago passed resolutions saying that the president has not received approval and that he must end the war. And basically, the president ignores it. Essentially, if the Congress was to send this to the president for his signature, he would simply veto it, and they don't have the votes to override the veto. So here we are at a point in time where the president basically ignores the War Powers Act, and he was asked if he would seek congressional approval. He said, well, I might, but I don't think it's necessary. I can do whatever I want to do. So this is a constitutional crisis because that's not what the Constitution requires. The Constitution requires that if the president does sign a treaty with a foreign country, he has to have approval by 2/3 of the Senate. That's what our Constitution mandates in Article 2. And what we've seen not only by President Trump, but for the last 3 decades, we have presidents waging war and negotiating treaties with foreign countries without congressional approval. And the Supreme Court basically says, well, this is a political issue, so they just defer to the president, and so we're left with really few, if any, legal constraints on the power of the president to wage war. So what surveys are revealing is that most Americans oppose the war in Iran. And we have a Congress that apparently should be reflecting the will of the people, but in fact, Congress has failed to do so. So here we are in a constitutional dilemma. And I think I propose a rather dramatic solution to this. The First Amendment of the Constitution gives citizens the right to petition their government, period. We can petition government at any level. And in fact, the Article 5 of the Constitution says that as citizens, we have equal rights with Congress to propose amendments to the Constitution. So what I propose is that we incorporate the War Powers Act in the Constitution through a petition from citizens to the federal government. And I think with the background of constitutional support, this idea of citizens using the petition process to correct a major flaw in Congress, a major flaw in our constitutional system, is exactly what the founders intended. So I know this is a dramatic solution to the problem, but I think if we could petition the federal government to incorporate the War Powers Act in the Constitution, we might finally get some constraints on the power of the president to wage war and negotiate treaties.
Interesting. Yeah, regarding that, our recent experience with this petition process is for Congress simply to refuse to call the convention that the Constitution calls for upon achieving a threshold of 2/3 of the states petitioning the federal government for said constitutional convention. What can we do about that before we have any hope of petitioning for anything?
Well, you're right. I think in 1979, more than 2/3 of the states had submitted resolutions to Congress calling for a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. Here again, Congress dropped the ball. Not only they did not even count the resolutions that were submitted, let alone enforce their constitutional duty to call a convention. Basically, the Constitution under Article 5 says once you have 2/3 of the states submitting a resolution that would require Congress to balance the budget, Congress must call a convention. And they failed to do so, and efforts to get them to do so have failed. So here again, it may be the case where only if the citizens petition Congress at this point and work with the states to introduce resolutions that would mandate this, can we have some hope of Congress letting the states call a constitutional convention under Article 5, which they are legally able to do. And that seems to be the only hope in terms of addressing that issue as well.
Yeah, interesting, especially on the War Powers Act. The Congress is ignoring something that would empower the Congress. Or, well, I guess the War Powers Act hasn't risen to that level yet, where 33 states have successfully petitioned them. But yeah, we need to discuss some mechanism by which Congress can be compelled or punished for not doing their constitutional duty. And I guess in this case, the president, likewise, if he is not following the Constitution, re war powers, likewise. I'm curious what that is. Well, as a senator once said, I can't remember who it was, when 535 people are responsible for something, no one is. And I guess that's what we're discovering here.
Yeah, I think Congress at this point is a paper tiger. They have constitutional mandates to do things that they simply fail to do or refuse to do. And we've seen resolutions introduced in Congress on the balanced budget amendment over the last more than half century, and Congress just ignores them. And that is certainly not what the founders intended, is that citizens through the petition process and under Article 5 can have the same powers of Congress to call a convention, amend the U.S. Constitution to address the budget issue, pass a balanced budget amendment. And I would argue that at this point in time, even a more pressing issue is the War Powers Act and the failure of Congress to perform its constitutional duty to approve or disapprove of a president waging war and negotiating a treaty with a foreign country.
Well, maybe here on July 3rd, 2026, we can conclude on a positive note and argue that if we can overcome this speed bump, a huge speed bump, we can use the unsustainable federal debt growth, which was something we usually talk about, to bring our federal government back to founding principles. Because clearly what they're doing now is it's unsustainable. Part of the reason for that is because it's too big. And the fact that we're not going to be able to spend 40% more than we take in indefinitely may bring us back to those founding principles and shrink the federal government back to a level where the Congress will do its job and the federal and the president's power to wage war will be constrained by congressional action without endangering our short-term national security. The president does need to be able to respond quickly to crises, but crises don't last 2 to 3 months. And if they do, the Congress has time to weigh in on those.
Yeah, we have precedents in the states. In Colorado, we have amended our Constitution through citizens' initiative. The Tabor Amendment was passed in 1992 with a large majority of Colorado citizens, and it has remained in place, and it has constrained the state government from exceeding its spending limits. So we know that this can work. We know that citizens can petition their government, as we've done here in Colorado, to do things that the legislature either refuses to do or does or addresses ineffectively. So what we need to do is begin doing these things at the federal level, and we need to get citizens involved in using direct democracy, the petition process, to address these problems. We can't sit back and wait for Congress to act on something like the Balanced Budget Amendment. After half a century, Congress has given up. So it's up to us as citizens to begin doing this.
I guess that's what we need most here on our 250th birthday, is a leader or a set of leaders that can mobilize citizens to demand these things, because we're losing our country through elections with a microscopic turnout, as we've seen in Colorado recently and in New York City recently, where things that have never worked in society and have been brutal and cruel have been the platform of people that have been elected, at least through their party primary, to elections that they're likely to win, because the Republicans are not competitive in at least the 3 districts in New York City, and perhaps in the one in Colorado where the Democrat Socialist won. So somebody out there, be that leader that mobilizes the citizens to retake their government. And one of the other things we're going to talk about in the future is how we vote on too many things. That's one of the big barriers to, by that I mean on too many candidates mostly, is that's one of the big barriers to the voter turnout. A lot of people just don't show up for a lot of elections because they can't keep track of all of the things that they're expected to vote on. So you may not agree with me on that, but we need to discuss what the optimal number of elections is and at what level, because we do seem to have acquired an overextended electorate, and that's a huge problem.
Yeah, I think in the next podcast, I'd like to talk about the elections in Colorado. I think that this is a very interesting outcome, as you say, and I think we know why it happened. And again, I think that the solution here is going to be direct democracy, getting citizens more involved in the election process and in fact in policies and constitutional amendments to begin addressing some of these problems. So let's defer that to the next one.
Absolutely. Otherwise we'll have an overextended viewership.